December 23, 2024. A millionaire's headlights cut through the blinding snowstorm on a deserted Colorado mountain road, revealing something that made his blood run cold. A small figure in a torn pink coat collapsed in a snowdrift, her body covered in bruises and frost. The little girl's lips were blue, her breathing shallow, and when she opened her eyes, she whispered 3 words that would haunt him forever. Would he turn away like everyone else had? Or would this broken child finally find someone willing to fight for her life? The storm had come without warning, the way storms do in the Colorado Rockies during winter. One moment the highway was clear, dusted with only a light powder. The next, the world disappeared behind sheets of white so thick you couldn't see 10 feet ahead. Marcus Holland gripped the steering wheel of his Range Rover tighter, his jaw set as the windshield wipers beat frantically against the onslaught. He should have left Denver 2 hours earlier, but the acquisition meeting had run late. A tech startup, $23 million on the table. The kind of deal that made headlines. Now none of that mattered. The road had become a nightmare. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. Another message from his assistant, probably asking if he'd made it to the Aspen Lodge yet. Marcus ignored it. His eyes stayed fixed on the white line barely visible beneath the accumulating snow. The highway twisted upward through the mountain pass, surrounded on both sides by towering pines bent under the weight of ice. No other cars, no lights, just him and the howling wind that rocked his vehicle with each gust. Marcus had driven this route 100 times. He knew every curve, every steep drop hidden just beyond the guardrails. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt wrong. He eased off the gas as the road narrowed, his high beams swallowed by the storm. The temperature gauge on his dashboard read 14 degrees. Outside it was probably colder. Deadly cold. That's when he saw it dot a flash of color in the snow. Pink, bright against the endless white. Marcus's foot hit the brake instinctively. The Range Rover skidded slightly before the traction control caught. His heart hammered as he squinted through the windshield. There, on the shoulder of the road, half buried in a snowdrift, a child. Jesus Christ, Marcus breathed. He threw the vehicle into park and grabbed his flashlight from the glove box, shoving the door open against the wind. The cold hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath. Snow stung his face as he stumbled forward, his expensive leather shoes sinking into the drift. The beam of his flashlight found her. A little girl, no older than 7 or 8, curled on her side. She wore a thin pink coat, torn at the sleeve, and jeans soaked through with melted snow. No hat, no gloves. Her hair, twisted into 2 small braids, was crusted with ice. But it was her face that made Marcus's stomach drop. Bruises, dark purple and yellow marks across her cheek, around her eye, along her jaw. Her lip was split, swollen. And her arms, when he knelt closer, his flashlight revealed more bruises circling her wrists like handcuffs. "Hey," Marcus said, his voice rough. He reached out, hesitating before touching her shoulder. "Hey, sweetheart, can you hear me?" Nothing. Panic clawed at his chest. He pressed 2 fingers against her neck, searching for a pulse. For a terrible moment, he felt nothing. Then there, faint, slow, but there. Okay, you're alive." His hands shook as he stripped off his coat and wrapped it around her tiny frame. She was so light when he lifted her, like she weighed nothing at all. Her skin was ice against his hands. Marcus ran back to the Range Rover, cradling her against his chest. He yanked the back door open and laid her across the seat, cranking the heat to maximum. His breath came in sharp bursts as he climbed into the driver's seat and grabbed his phone. No signal. Damn it. He tried again. Nothing. The storm must have knocked out the towers. He looked back at the girl. Her eyes were closed, her breathing so shallow he had to watch closely to see her chest rise. Frost clung to her eyelashes. Marcus made a split-second decision. The nearest hospital was 30 miles back down the mountain. But his lodge, his private residence, was only 8 miles ahead. It had a generator, medical supplies, and most importantly, heat. He threw the vehicle into drive and pressed the gas, the tires spinning briefly before catching traction. "Hold on," he whispered, glancing in the rearview mirror at the small figure wrapped in his coat. Just hold on. The road climbed steeper, each turn more treacherous than the last. Marcus's knuckles were white on the wheel. His entire focus narrowed to keeping the vehicle on the road and getting to safety. Questions burned through his mind. Who was she? How did she end up out here? Where were her parents? And those bruises, those weren't from a fall. Someone had hurt her. Badly. The miles crawled by. 5 minutes. 10. The storm intensified, visibility dropping to almost nothing. Marcus leaned forward, his face inches from the windshield, searching for the turnoff to his property. Then, finally, the stone pillars marking his private drive. He swung the wheel hard, the Range Rover fishtailing before straightening out. The driveway was a quarter-mile long, lined with aspens that looked like ghosts in the storm. At the end, the lodge appeared, its timber frame and floor-to-ceiling windows dark against the white. Marcus pulled up to the front entrance and killed the engine. He jumped out, ran to the back door, and scooped the girl into his arms again. She was heavier now, or maybe his arms were just tired. Her head lolled against his shoulder. Inside, the lodge was cold but sheltered from the wind. Marcus kicked the door shut and carried her straight to the great room, where a massive stone fireplace stood ready with logs. He laid her on the leather sofa and grabbed the throw blankets draped over the back, piling them on top of her. His hands worked on autopilot, striking a match and lighting the kindling. Flames caught quickly, spreading warmth into the room. He turned back to the girl, kneeling beside the sofa. "Hey!" he said softly, brushing ice crystals from her forehead. "You're safe now. You're going to be okay." Her eyelids fluttered. Marcus held his breath. Slowly, painfully, her eyes opened. They were dark brown, clouded with confusion and fear. She stared at him for a long moment, her gaze unfocused. Then her cracked lips moved, forming words so quiet he had to lean in to hear. "Please, don't hurt me." The 3 words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He pulled back slightly, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I won't hurt you," he said, his voice breaking. "I promise. You're safe here." But even as he said it, her eyes drifted closed again, her body going limp beneath the blankets. Marcus stood, running a hand through his hair. His mind raced. He needed to get her warm, check her injuries, figure out who she was. But first, he tried his phone again. Still no signal. The landline was dead too. The storm must have taken out the lines. He was alone with a dying child, cut off from the world, with no way to call for help. Marcus looked down at the little girl on his sofa, her bruised face barely visible beneath the pile of blankets. Someone had beaten her. Someone had left her in a storm to die. And now, whether he was ready or not, her life was in his hands. The fire crackled, shadows dancing across the walls. Outside, the wind howled like something alive, clawing at the windows. Marcus knelt beside her again, his jaw tight with resolve. "I don't know who you are," he whispered, "but I'm not letting you die. Not tonight." Marcus moved fast, his business instincts kicking in, the same focus he used in boardrooms now redirected to saving a life. He stripped off his wet dress shirt and threw on a thermal Henley from the closet, then grabbed the emergency medical kit from the kitchen cabinet. The girl hadn't moved. Her breathing was still dangerously shallow, each exhale barely fogging the air. He knelt beside the sofa, opening the kit with shaking hands. Thermometer first. He gently placed it under her tongue, waiting for the beep that felt like it took forever. 88.3 degrees. Marcus's stomach dropped. Severe hypothermia. At this temperature, her heart could stop at any moment. "Okay. Think," he muttered to himself. "Warm her gradually. Not too fast or you'll shock her system." He ran to the master bathroom and started filling the tub with lukewarm water. Not hot, lukewarm. While it filled, he grabbed every towel he could find and heated them in the dryer. Back in the great room, he carefully began removing her wet clothes. The pink coat was stiff with ice. Underneath, her sweater was threadbare, full of holes. Her jeans were soaked through. That's when he saw the full extent of the injuries. More bruises covered her ribs, her back, her legs. Some were fresh, dark purple. Others were yellowing, days old. Belt marks striped across her shoulder blades. Cigarette burns dotted her forearms. Marcus's hands froze. His vision blurred with rage so intense he had to close his eyes and breathe. Someone had tortured this child. Systematically, repeatedly. He forced himself to focus. Anger could come later. Right now, she needs him as a present. He wrapped her in warm towels and carried her to the bathroom. The water had reached the right level, lukewarm, around 95 degrees. He lowered her in slowly, supporting her head. Her eyes flew open suddenly, wild with panic. She thrashed weakly, water splashing over the side. "No, no, it's okay," Marcus said quickly, his voice gentle but firm. "You're safe. This is helping you. I promise." She stared at him, terror etched in every line of her small face. Then her gaze dropped to the water and slowly, so slowly, her body stopped fighting. Marcus kept one hand under her head, using the other to pour warm water over her arms and shoulders, gradually raising her core temperature. He talked the whole time, his voice low and steady. "My name is Marcus. You're in my home. You're safe here. Nobody's going to hurt you. I found you on the road in the storm. You were very cold, but we're fixing that now." She didn't respond, just stared at him with those dark, haunted eyes. After 15 minutes, he checked her temperature again. 91 degrees. Better, but still dangerous. He drained the tub and refilled it with slightly warmer water. This time, she didn't fight. She just watched him, silent, evaluating. "Can you tell me your name?" Marcus asked gently. "Nothing. Do you know how old you are?" Her lips moved, but no sound came out. "That's okay. You don't have to talk. Just rest." Another 15 minutes passed. Her temperature climbed to 94 degrees. Color started returning to her lips, though they were still cracked and bleeding. When Marcus finally lifted her from the tub, wrapping her in fresh warm towels, she was shivering. A good sign. Shivering meant her body was trying to generate heat on its own. He carried her back to the great room and dressed her in his smallest clothes, a thermal shirt that swallowed her frame, wool socks that went up to her knees. Then he laid her back on the sofa, the fire roaring now, casting golden light across the room. Marcus opened a bottle of water and held it to her lips. Small sips, just a little. She drank greedily, water dribbling down her chin. He pulled it back. "Slowly. Your body needs to adjust." He let her have 3 more small sips, then set the bottle aside. Her eyes were clearer now, more focused. She looked around the room, taking in the vaulted ceilings, the expensive furniture, the massive windows showing nothing but white. Then her gaze landed back on him. "Where?" Her voice was barely a whisper, raw and broken. "Where am I?" "My lodge. In the mountains outside of Aspen," Marcus said. "I found you on the highway. Do you remember what happened?" Her face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks, silent and devastating. Marcus grabbed a tissue, gently dabbing at her face. "It's okay. You don't have to tell me now." But she shook her head, the words tumbling out between sobs. They left me. They said I was bad, that I deserved it. They drove me out there and pushed me out of the car." White-hot fury exploded in Marcus's chest. He clenched his jaw so hard his teeth ached. "Who did this to you?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. She flinched, shrinking back into the cushions. Marcus immediately softened, raising his hands. "I'm sorry. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at whoever hurt you. But I need to know who they are so I can make sure they never touch you again." She stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for something. Trust, maybe, or just the absence of cruelty. Finally, she whispered, "My foster parents, the Hendersons, they didn't want me anymore." Foster parents. The words hit Marcus like ice water. This wasn't a kidnapping. This wasn't a stranger. These were the people who were supposed to protect her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Zoe," she said. Zoe Palmer. Zoe. Marcus repeated it like a promise. That's a beautiful name. How old are you, Zoe? 8. Her voice cracked. I'll be 9 in February. If I make it to February. The casualness of that statement, the acceptance that she might not survive, broke something inside Marcus. You're going to make it to February, he said fiercely. And March. And every month after that. I promise you. Zoe looked at him with eyes far too old for 8 years. Adults always promise. Then they lie. Marcus had no answer for that. Because she was right. Some adults had promised to care for her when they became her foster parents. And then they'd beaten her, burned her, and thrown her into a storm to die. He pulled out his phone again. Still no signal. He tried the landline. Still dead. The storm knocked out the phones, he explained. But as soon as I can, I'm calling the police. The Hendersons are going to jail for what they did to you. Zoe's eyes widened in panic. No, you can't call them. They'll take me back. Please, please don't send me back. She tried to sit up, her small body trembling violently. Marcus gently pressed her back down. Listen to me, Zoe. I will never, ever send you back to people who hurt you. The police will arrest them. You'll never have to see them again. But what about me? Her voice rose, hysteria creeping in. What happened to me? I'll go back to the group home. Or another foster family. And they'll be just like the Hendersons. Or worse. Marcus opened his mouth to reassure her, then stopped. Because what could he say? He didn't know how the system worked. He didn't know if she was right. I won't let that happen, he said finally. You can't stop it. Zoe's tears flowed harder now. Nobody ever stops it. Nobody cares about kids like me. Kids like me. Marcus looked at this small, broken girl in front of him. Beaten, abandoned, and convinced she was disposable. And something shifted inside him. Something fundamental and irreversible. I care, he said quietly. And I'm not nobody. He had built an empire from nothing. He had demolished competitors and resurrected dying companies. He had resources, connections, and a reputation that opened doors others couldn't even find. If the system was broken, he would fix it. If Zoe needed protection, he would become her shield. Get some rest, Marcus said, tucking the blankets around her. When the storm passes, we'll figure everything out. But tonight, you're safe. I'll give you my word. Zoe studied his face one more time, then nodded slowly. Her eyelids drooped, exhaustion finally overtaking adrenaline. Within minutes, she was asleep. Marcus stood, staring down at her, at the bruises covering her skin, at the scars that would never fully fade. He walked to the window and looked out at the storm still raging. Somewhere out there, 2 people were in a warm house, probably sleeping peacefully, convinced they'd gotten away with attempted murder. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Marcus pulled out his phone again, checking for a signal. Nothing yet, but eventually the storm would pass. The phones would work. And when they did, he would make sure justice didn't just find the Hendersons. It would destroy them. The storm raged through the night. Marcus didn't sleep. He couldn't. He sat in the armchair across from the sofa, watching Zoe's chest rise and fall, checking her temperature every 30 minutes. 96.8 degrees, then 97.3, then 98.1. Her body was fighting back, reclaiming warmth. But it was the wounds he couldn't see that worried him most. Around 3 in the morning, she started whimpering in her sleep. Small animal sounds of distress. Her body curled tighter, hands coming up to protect her face. No, please, she mumbled. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. Marcus moved to kneel beside the sofa, his hand hovering over her shoulder, unsure if touch would comfort or terrify. He settled for his voice instead. Zoe, you're safe. It's just a dream. Nobody's hurting you. Her eyes snapped open, wild and unseeing. For a heartbeat, she looked right through him. Then recognition dawned, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry for waking you. You didn't wake me. I was already up. Marcus grabbed the water bottle and helped her take a few sips. Bad dream. She nodded, not meeting his eyes. Want to talk about it? She shook her head violently. That's okay. Marcus settled back into the chair. I'll be right here if you change your mind. Zoe stared at him, confusion written across her features. Why are you being nice to me? The question gutted him. What kind of life had she lived where kindness was suspicious? Because you deserve kindness, he said simply. Every child does. Mrs. Henderson said I was the devil's child. That's why my real parents didn't want me. Her voice was flat, reciting facts she'd been taught to believe. She said I brought evil wherever I went. Marcus felt rage bloom fresh in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. Mrs. Henderson is a liar. And a coward. There's nothing evil about you, Zoe. Nothing. She looked down at her hands, at the cigarette burns dotting her forearms. Then why does everyone hurt me? Marcus had no answer that would satisfy an 8-year-old's need for the world to make sense. Because the truth was ugly. Some people were monsters and children were easy targets. I don't know, he admitted. But I know it's not your fault. It was never your fault. Zoe pulled the blanket tighter around herself. How long do I have to stay here? As long as it takes for me to figure out how to keep you safe. You can't keep me. Her voice was matter-of-fact. The state decides. They'll put me somewhere else. Maybe with people worse than the Hendersons. Marcus leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. What if I told you I'm going to fight that? What if I told you I have lawyers who can move mountains? Why would you do that for me? The question came out broken, disbelieving. You don't even know me. I know enough. Marcus held her gaze. I know you're brave. I know you survived something that would break most adults. And I know that if I walk away and let the system swallow you up, I'll never forgive myself. Zoe searched his face, looking for the lie, the trick, the inevitable betrayal. Marcus let her look. He had nothing to hide. Finally, she whispered, what's going to happen when the phones work again? I'll call 911. Get you to a hospital for a full examination. The police will come. They'll ask you questions about what happened. And then I'll call every lawyer I know. I'll make sure the Hendersons face charges. And I'll petition to become your emergency guardian until we figure out something permanent. Can you do that? I don't know, Marcus admitted. But I'm going to try. Zoe was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was so small he almost missed it. Nobody's ever tried before. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with years of disappointment and abandonment. Marcus stood and walked to the window. Dawn was trying to break through the storm, the sky shifting from black to gray. The wind had died down slightly, though snow still fell in thick curtains. He thought about his life before tonight. The deals, the acquisitions, the endless pursuit of more. He'd built an empire but had no one to share it with. No family, no children, just money and the hollow satisfaction of winning. Now an 8-year-old girl lay on his sofa, bruised and broken, and for the first time in years, Marcus felt like something actually mattered. Zoe, he said, turning back to face her. I need you to understand something. I'm not a perfect person. I'm probably going to mess this up in 100 different ways. But I swear to you, I will not abandon you. Even when it gets hard. Even when the system fights me. I'm in this now. She stared at him with those ancient eyes. You promise. I promise. Adults always break their promises. I know. Marcus moved back to the chair, meeting her gaze head-on. That's why I'm going to prove I'm different. Outside, the storm began to quiet. The worst had passed. Soon the phones would work. Soon reality would come crashing in. Police reports, hospital visits, investigations. But for now, in the growing dawn light, Marcus sat vigil over a child who'd been thrown away like garbage. And he made silent promises to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. Let me have enough. Let me be what she needs. Don't let me fail her the way everyone else has. Zoe's eyes drifted closed again, her breathing evening out. This time she didn't whimper, didn't flinch. She just slept, her small hand clutching the edge of the blanket. Marcus checked his phone. Still no signal. But the storm was breaking. It wouldn't be long now. He stood and walked to his study, pulling out his laptop. If he was going to fight for this child, he needed to understand what he was up against. He began searching: Colorado foster care system, emergency guardianship, child abuse prosecution, termination of parental rights. The more he read, the more his jaw tightened. The system wasn't just broken. It was designed to fail children like Zoe. But Marcus Holland had made a fortune finding loopholes, exploiting weaknesses, and refusing to accept no for an answer. The state had no idea what was coming. By 7 in the morning, Marcus's phone finally showed 1 bar of signal. He stepped onto the covered porch, the cold air biting through his thermal shirt, and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I found a child on Highway 82 last night during the storm. She's been severely abused and abandoned. I need the police and an ambulance at my location immediately. The dispatcher's tone shifted from routine to urgent. Is the child conscious? Breathing? Yes, but she has hypothermia, extensive bruising, burn marks, and signs of prolonged abuse. She told me her foster parents, the Hendersons, left her on the side of the road to die. Keys clicked rapidly on the other end. Can you give me your exact location, sir? Marcus rattled off the address. The dispatcher confirmed emergency services were en route, ETA 40 minutes due to road conditions. Sir, I need you to stay on the line. What's your name? Marcus Holland. A pause. Marcus Holland? Holland Technologies. Yes. Another pause, longer this time. Sir, I'm going to connect you with Detective Sarah Chun from the Child Protection Unit. Please hold on. Marcus paced the porch, watching fresh snow fall in the early morning light. Through the window, he could see Zoe still asleep on the sofa, her small form barely visible under the mound of blankets. Mr. Holland? A woman's voice, sharp and professional. This is Detective Chun. The dispatcher briefed me. Can you describe the child's injuries? Marcus detailed everything: the bruises in various stages of healing, the belt marks, the cigarette burns, the hypothermia. His voice remained steady, clinical, but his free hand clenched into a fist. And she identified her abusers as Dale and Patricia Henderson? Yes. She said they're her foster parents. Stay on the line. Marcus heard keyboard clicks, a muttered curse. Then Detective Chun came back, her voice tight. Mr. Holland, we have a serious problem. Marcus's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? The Hendersons reported Zoe Palmer as a runaway 3 days ago. They claimed she stole money from them and fled in the middle of the night. They filed a police report stating she was violent, destructive, and a danger to their other foster children. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. She's 8 years old. She has cigarette burns and belt marks all over her body. She nearly died from hypothermia because they threw her out of a car in a blizzard. I believe you, Mr. Holland, but legally this complicates things. The Hendersons established a paper trail. They're claiming she's a runaway. That gives them plausible deniability. Plausible deniability? Marcus's voice rose. She was barefoot in 14-degree weather with a torn coat. What part of that sounds like she ran away? I'm on your side, Detective Chun said firmly. But I need you to understand what we're dealing with. The Hendersons have been foster parents for 12 years. They've housed over 40 children. They have glowing reviews from the state. They're considered model caregivers. Marcus felt sick. How many of those 40 children did they abuse? That's exactly what I intend to find out. But Mr. Holland, this isn't going to be a simple arrest. This is going to be a war. The Hendersons have connections. Patricia Henderson's brother is a county supervisor. Dale Henderson coaches Little League and volunteers at their church. They're pillars of the community. And Zoe is nobody, Marcus said bitterly. Is that what you're telling me? That's what the system will say. Not me. Detective Chen's voice softened. I've been working in child protection for 15 years. I've seen this pattern before. Upstanding citizens who use foster care as a cover. They take in kids nobody advocates for, kids from broken homes, kids with behavioral issues, kids the system has already failed. Then they abuse them, knowing those kids won't be believed. Marcus closed his eyes, nausea rolling through him. How do we stop them? We need Zoe's testimony. We need medical documentation of her injuries. And we need to move fast before the Hendersons lawyer up and paint her as a troubled child who hurt herself for attention. She's 8. I know. But I've seen younger children's testimonies destroyed in court. The Hendersons' attorney will argue she's lying, that she ran away and injured herself in the storm, that she's manipulating a wealthy man for sympathy. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. When will you be here? I'm leaving now. I'll beat the ambulance by 20 minutes. Mr. Holland, I need to ask. What's your intention here? Why did you bring her to your home instead of a hospital? The hospital was 30 miles away. She would have died before I got her there. But now? Are you planning to stay involved? Marcus looked through the window again at Zoe's sleeping form. I'm planning to make sure she never goes back into a system that failed her this badly. Detective Chun was quiet for a moment. Be careful, Mr. Holland. Good intentions don't always translate to legal reality. The state doesn't just hand over custody to millionaires who find kids on the road. Then the state and I are going to have a problem. A small sound made Marcus turn. Zoe stood in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes wide with fear. Are they coming? She whispered. Are you sending me back? Marcus ended the call and crossed to her, kneeling down to her level. No one is sending you back to the Hendersons. Ever. But the police. The police are coming to help you, not hurt you. There's a detective named Sarah Chin. She's going to ask you questions about what happened. And I'll be right there with you the whole time. Zoe's lower lip trembled. They told the police I ran away, that I stole from them. I know, the detective told me. But Zoe, look at me. He waited until her eyes met his. The truth always comes out. Your injuries, the medical evidence, your testimony. It's all going to prove they're lying. What if nobody believes me? What if they say I'm making it up? Marcus took her small hands in his, careful of the burns on her forearms. Then I'll use every resource I have to make them believe you. I'll hire the best lawyers. I'll put investigators on the Hendersons. I'll find every other child they've hurt. And I will not stop until they're behind bars. Why? The question came out broken. Why do you care so much? Marcus didn't have a simple answer. 24 hours ago, he'd been focused on acquisition deals and profit margins. Now he was ready to go to war for a child he'd just met. Because you matter, Zoe. Because what happened to you was evil, and I can't just walk away from that. Because... He paused, surprised by the emotion in his own throat. Because maybe I was supposed to drive down that road last night. Maybe I was supposed to find you. Zoe stared at him, tears streaming down her bruised cheeks. Then, slowly, she leaned forward and wrapped her thin arms around his neck. Marcus froze, then carefully returned the embrace, his hand cradling the back of her head. She was so small, so fragile, trembling against him like a wounded bird. I'm scared, she whispered into his shoulder. I know, but you're not alone anymore. In the distance, sirens began to wail, growing closer. The sound made Zoe tense, but Marcus kept holding her, kept whispering reassurances. The Hendersons thought they'd gotten away with attempted murder. They thought they'd covered their tracks with lies about a runaway. They had no idea they'd just made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in Colorado. And Marcus Holland never lost. Detective Sarah Chan arrived first, her unmarked sedan crunching through the snow-covered driveway. She was in her 40s, Asian American, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Behind her, an ambulance navigated the slick road carefully. Marcus met her at the door, Zoe clinging to his leg like a shadow. Mr. Holland. Chun extended her hand, then looked down at Zoe. Her expression softened immediately. Hi, sweetheart. I'm Detective Chin. I'm here to help you. Zoe pressed closer to Marcus, silent. Chun didn't push. She stepped inside, her gaze sweeping the great room. The fire still burning, the pile of blankets on the sofa, the discarded wet clothes in a heap near the bathroom. Paramedics are 2 minutes out, Chun said. They'll need to examine her, document injuries. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it's crucial for building the case. Marcus nodded. Zoe, the doctors need to check you over. I'll be right there with you. Okay? She looked up at him with terrified eyes but nodded. The paramedics entered. A man and woman, both professional and gentle. They set up a mobile examination area, speaking softly to Zoe as they worked. Can you show me where it hurts, honey? Zoe pointed to her ribs, her back, her arms. The female paramedic's jaw tightened as she cataloged each injury, taking photographs with a medical camera. These burns, the paramedic said quietly to Chun. They're deliberate. Multiple instances, different stages of healing. I need everything documented, Chun replied. Every bruise, every burn, every mark. Marcus stood against the wall, fists clenched, watching Zoe endure yet another violation. Even if this one was meant to help her. Her eyes kept finding him, seeking reassurance. You're doing great, he told her. Almost done. After 20 minutes, the paramedics finished. She needs a full hospital evaluation, the female medic said. But her vitals are stable. You saved her life, Mr. Holland. Chun pulled out a recording device. Zoe, I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay? Zoe looked at Marcus. He nodded encouragingly. Can you tell me what happened 3 days ago? Chun asked gently. Zoe's voice was barely audible. Mrs. Henderson said I was being punished. She locked me in the basement. No food, just water from the sink. Marcus's jaw clenched so hard it ached. Why did she say you were being punished? I broke a glass. I was doing dishes and it slipped. She said clumsy children don't deserve meals. Chun wrote rapidly in her notebook. What happened after the basement? Mr. Henderson came down the next night. He had his belt. He said I needed to learn. Her voice cracked. He hit me until I couldn't stand up. Then he put cigarettes out on my arms. He said it would teach me not to steal. But you didn't steal anything? Zoe shook her head violently. I never stole. Promise. But they kept saying I did. They kept saying I was evil and nobody would believe me. I believe you, Chun said firmly. What happened next? Yesterday morning, they put me in the car. Said they were taking me somewhere better. But they drove to the mountains instead. Mrs. Henderson said that the storm would take care of their problem. That I wasn't worth the monthly check anymore. Chen's expression darkened. They said that? Those exact words. Yes. Then Mr. Henderson pushed me out of the car. He threw my coat at me and drove away. I tried to run after them. But Zoe's voice dissolved into sobs. They just left me there. Marcus crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest, her small body shaking. Chun stood, her face carved from stone. That's enough for now. Zoe, you've been incredibly brave. This testimony is going to help us. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted. Excuse me. She stepped into the hallway. Marcus could hear fragments. Are you serious? No, absolutely not. I don't care what they're claiming. Chun returned, her face grim. We have a situation. The Hendersons just showed up at the county sheriff's office with their attorney. They're demanding Zoe be returned to them immediately. Marcus felt ice flood his veins. You can't be serious. Their lawyer is arguing that Zoe ran away, that you're holding her unlawfully, and that without evidence of abuse, she must be returned to her legal guardians. Evidence. Marcus gestured to Zoe. Look at her. She's covered in evidence. Their attorney is claiming those injuries are self-inflicted or occurred during her time as a runaway. Without a full medical examination and a judge's ruling, they have legal standing. Then get a judge. It's Sunday morning, Mr. Holland. No judges are available until tomorrow. And the Hendersons are demanding immediate compliance with state law. Marcus's mind raced. How long do we have? They're on their way here now, with a sheriff's deputy to enforce the return. Zoe's scream cut through the room. No, no, please. They'll kill me. Please don't let them take me. She grabbed Marcus's shirt with both fists, her terror absolute. You promised. You said I was safe. Marcus's heart shattered. He looked at Chun desperately. There has to be something. There is, Chun said. But it's risky. I can place her in emergency protective custody based on credible threat of harm. But Mr. Holland, that means she goes into the state system tonight. A group home or emergency foster placement. Not with you. No. Zoe's voice was raw. No more foster homes. They'll be just like the Hendersons. Marcus knelt in front of her, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me. I won't let them take you back to the Hendersons. I don't care what I have to do. Mr. Holland, Chun warned. Don't do anything that will hurt your chances of gaining custody later. The sound of vehicles approaching made everyone freeze. Through the window, Marcus saw 2 cars pulling up. A sheriff's SUV and a silver sedan. Dale and Patricia Henderson stepped out of the sedan. Dale was tall, barrel-chested, with a friendly face that would fool anyone. Patricia was thin, severe, her mouth set in a righteous line. Behind them, a man in an expensive suit, their attorney. Chun moved to the door, her hand on her weapon. Stay inside. Let me handle this. But Marcus was already moving. He strode to the door and threw it open, stepping onto the porch. The cold air hit him, but he didn't feel it. All he felt was rage. Dale Henderson smiled, actually smiled. Mr. Holland, I presume? Thank you so much for finding our Zoe. We've been worried sick. Marcus descended the steps slowly, positioning himself between the Hendersons and his front door. Get off my property. The smile faltered. Now, sir, I understand you're concerned, but Zoe is our responsibility. She's a troubled child, and we're equipped to handle. You threw her out of a car in a blizzard to die. Marcus's voice was lethal. I found her hypothermic with cigarette burns and belt marks all over her body. Patricia Henderson spoke up, her voice dripping with false concern. Those injuries happened while she was running away. We've been trying to get her help for her self-harm issues, but she refuses treatment. She's 8 years old. Troubled children can be very manipulative, Mr. Holland. The attorney interjected smoothly. My clients have documentation of Zoe's behavioral problems. They filed a proper police report. And frankly, sir, you're currently in violation of state law by refusing to return her. The sheriff's deputy, a young man who looked deeply uncomfortable, stepped forward. Mr. Holland, I'm Deputy Warren. I'm here to facilitate the legal transfer of custody back to the Hendersons. Marcus didn't move. That's not happening. Sir, I don't want trouble. But the law is clear. The law is broken, Marcus interrupted. And I'm not handing a child back to people who tried to murder her. Those are serious accusations, the attorney said. Do you have proof? Her testimony, her injuries, the fact that she nearly died, the testimony of a child with documented behavioral issues, injuries that could have occurred anywhere. Mr. Holland, you're a businessman. You understand how evidence works. Behind Marcus, he heard the door open. Zoe appeared, Chun trying to pull her back, but she broke free and ran to Marcus, wrapping herself around his leg. Please, she sobbed. Don't let them take me. They'll kill me. Please. Patricia Henderson's face twisted with false sweetness. Oh, Zoe, honey. No one's going to hurt you. You're just confused. You've been through so much. You put cigarettes out on my skin. Zoe screamed. You locked me in the basement. You left me in the snow. See? Patricia turned to the deputy, tears in her eyes. She's having another episode. This is exactly what we've been dealing with. Mr. Holland, please, let us get her the help she needs. Marcus felt Zoe trembling against him. He looked at Dale Henderson, at the calculation behind those friendly eyes, at Patricia's perfect performance of concern, at their attorney's smug confidence. And Marcus made a decision. Deputy Warren, he said calmly, I'm invoking my right to refuse entry to my property. These people are trespassing. And I'm informing you that I have security footage from my gate camera that shows the Hendersons have made no prior arrangement for this visit. The attorney's smile tightened. You can't hide her forever, Mr. Holland. I don't need forever. I just need until tomorrow when a judge can hear emergency custody arguments. Marcus looked at Chun. Detective, I assume you'll be filing those papers? Chun stepped forward. Already done. Zoe Palmer is under emergency protective custody as of this moment. She will not be returned to the Henderson home pending investigation and judicial review. You can't do that. Patricia's mask slipped, fury flashing across her face. I just did, Chun replied coldly. And if you take one step closer to this child, I'll arrest you for attempted intimidation of a witness. Dale Henderson's friendly demeanor evaporated. His voice dropped, hard and threatening. You're making a mistake, Holland. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Marcus smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. No, you have no idea who you're dealing with. Now get off my property before I have you removed. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Then Dale turned to his attorney. Let's go. We'll let the courts handle this. As they walked back to their car, Patricia called over her shoulder. Zoe, honey, we'll see you soon. This will all be sorted out, and you'll come home where you belong. Zoe whimpered and pressed closer to Marcus. The vehicles pulled away, disappearing down the long driveway. Only then did Marcus exhale, his hands shaking with suppressed adrenaline. Chun touched his shoulder. That was brave, and potentially very stupid. I don't care. You should, because they're going to fight dirty. Chun looked down at Zoe. And they're not going to stop. Marcus lifted Zoe into his arms. She wrapped around him like she was drowning, and he was her only lifeline. Neither am I, Marcus said quietly. Neither am I. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. Marcus stood in front of the mirror in his Denver office, adjusting his tie. He'd barely slept. Zoe had stayed overnight at a temporary safe house under Detective Chen's supervision, the compromise that kept her from the Hendersons while the legal system ground forward. His phone buzzed. Chen's text. She asked for you 3 times last night. I barely ate. Scared. Marcus's chest tightened. He typed back. Tell her I'll see her in court. Tell her I'm fighting for her. The emergency custody hearing was set for 10 a.m. at the Denver Family Court. Marcus had assembled a legal team that would terrify most corporations. 3 of the best family law attorneys in Colorado, a child psychologist, and a private investigator he'd put on the Henderson case 24 hours ago. What his investigator had found made Marcus sick. The courtroom was smaller than Marcus expected, less imposing than the corporate litigation chambers he was used to. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a reputation for being fair but unforgiving. The Hendersons sat on the opposite side with their attorney, a man named Richard Carlson who specialized in defending foster parents. Dale wore a suit and tie, looking every bit the respectable community member. Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, playing the role of heartbroken caregiver. Marcus wanted to cross the room and drag them both out by their throats. Detective Chun entered with Zoe. The little girl wore clean clothes, jeans and a purple sweater, but her face was still bruised, the marks around her eye turning yellow-green. When she saw Marcus, she ran to him. He knelt and caught her in his arms. Hey, sweetheart, you okay? She shook her head, burying her face in his shoulder. I don't want to go back. Please don't let them take me. I won't. I promise. All rise, the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Morrison presiding. The hearing began with Carlson's opening statement. He painted a picture of devoted foster parents who'd taken in a difficult child, only to have her run away and fabricate stories to avoid consequences. Your Honor, Zoe Palmer has a documented history of behavioral issues. She's been in 7 foster homes in 4 years, expelled from each due to violence, theft, and pathological lying. The Hendersons took her in when no one else would. They provided structure, discipline, and love. And this is how they're repaid, with false accusations that could destroy their reputation and their ability to help other children. Marcus's attorney, Jennifer Walsh, stood immediately. Your Honor, I'd like to submit medical evidence that directly contradicts Mr. Carlson's narrative. She approached the bench with a folder thick with documentation. These are photographs taken by paramedics and emergency room physicians. Multiple cigarette burns in various stages of healing. Belt marks consistent with repeated beatings. Bruising patterns that indicate sustained abuse over months, not days. And evidence of severe hypothermia consistent with prolonged exposure to below-freezing temperatures. Judge Morrison examined the photos, her expression darkening with each page. Furthermore, Walsh continued, Zoe Palmer was found on a deserted highway during a blizzard, wearing inadequate clothing, with no shoes, and no means of communication. The defense would have this court believe an 8-year-old child orchestrated her own near-death experience to frame her foster parents. Carlson stood. Your Honor, troubled children have been known to harm themselves for attention. She's 8 years old. Marcus couldn't stop himself. He rose from his seat, his voice cutting through the courtroom. She has cigarette burns on her arms, belt scars on her back. She was dumped in a snowstorm to die. What kind of attention-seeking requires attempted murder? Mr. Holland, Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. You will sit down and remain silent or I will have you removed from this courtroom. Marcus sat, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. Zoe reached for his hand, squeezing it. Walsh continued, Your Honor, we're requesting emergency custody be granted to Mr. Holland, pending a full investigation. We have evidence that the Hendersons not only abused Zoe Palmer but potentially other children in their care. That's a baseless accusation, Carlson shot back. Is it? Marcus's private investigator, James Rivera, stood and handed a document to the bailiff. Your Honor, I've identified 6 former foster children who were placed with the Hendersons over the past decade. 3 have agreed to testify about similar patterns of abuse, isolation, starvation, physical violence, and psychological torture. The courtroom erupted. Carlson was on his feet, objecting. Patricia Henderson was crying. Real tears now, tears of panic. Dale's face had gone pale. Judge Morrison slammed her gavel. Order. I will have an order. The room quieted. Mr. Rivera, the judge said, Are these witnesses available? 2 are outside this courtroom right now, Your Honor. The 3rd is connecting via video conference from California. Judge Morrison looked at Carlson. Does your client wish to respond to these allegations? Dale Henderson leaned forward to whisper to his attorney. Carlson's confident demeanor was cracking. Your Honor, These accusations are coming from troubled individuals with histories of... I'd like to hear from one of them, the judge interrupted. Bailiff, bring in the first witness. A young man in his early 20s entered. He was tall, thin, with haunted eyes that Marcus recognized. The same look Zoe had. Please state your name for the record, Judge Morrison said. Nathan Brooks. I was placed with Dale and Patricia Henderson when I was 9 years old. I stayed there for 11 months. Can you tell the court about your experience? Nathan's voice shook, but he pushed through. They locked me in the basement for days at a time. No food, just water. Mrs. Henderson would come down and tell me I was worthless, that my real parents threw me away because I was garbage. Mr. Henderson. His voice broke. Mr. Henderson used his belt and cigarettes. He said pain would make me obedient. Patricia Henderson stood suddenly. He's lying. He was a violent child who... Sit down, Mrs. Henderson, Judge Morrison commanded. You'll have your chance to speak. Nathan continued, tears streaming down his face. I tried to tell my caseworker, but the Hendersons were so good at pretending. Everyone believed them, so I stopped talking. I just survived until they got tired of me and sent me back to the group home. Why didn't you report this to the police? The judge asked gently. Because I was nobody, Your Honor. A foster kid with a record. Who would believe me over them? He looked directly at Dale Henderson. But I believe Zoe, because I know exactly what she went through. A second witness was called. A young woman named Ashley Martinez who told a nearly identical story. Isolation, beatings, burns, psychological torture disguised as discipline. By the time the third witness appeared on the video screen, a man in his 30s now living in California, Carlson wasn't even objecting anymore. He sat slumped in his chair, whispering urgently with the Hendersons. Judge Morrison removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of fury barely contained. In 20 years on this bench, I have never been more disgusted by what I've heard. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, you have used the foster care system as a hunting ground for vulnerable children. You've hidden behind your reputation while inflicting torture on those who had no voice to stop you. She turned to the bailiff. I want criminal charges filed immediately. Child abuse, child endangerment, attempted murder, and I want an investigation into every single child who has passed through that home. Patricia Henderson collapsed into sobs. Dale Henderson sat frozen, his face a mask of shock. As for custody, Judge Morrison continued, I am granting temporary emergency guardianship to Mr. Marcus Holland. Zoe Palmer will not return to the Henderson home. She will remain in Mr. Holland's care, pending further hearings to determine permanent placement. The gavel came down with the sound of finality. Marcus exhaled, pulling Zoe into his arms. She was crying, not from fear this time, but relief. You did it, she whispered. You kept your promise. Detective Chun approached, a rare smile on her face. Mr. Holland, I've got officers waiting to take the Hendersons into custody. They won't make bail, not after today. As the Hendersons were led away in handcuffs, Dale turned one last time to look at Marcus. The friendly mask was gone. Only hatred remained. This isn't over, Dale hissed. Marcus met his gaze with cold certainty. Yes, it is. Outside the courtroom, news cameras had gathered. Word had spread. Billionaire saves abused foster child. Exposes serial abusers. Reporters shouted questions as Marcus carried Zoe to his car. He ignored them all. The only voice that mattered was the small one pressed against his chest. Where do I go now? Zoe asked quietly. Marcus opened the car door and settled her in the back seat, buckling her in carefully. Then he looked at her with absolute certainty. Home, he said simply. You're coming home with me.